This is Think Tech Hawaii with a new show that's called Urban Transcendence. And Urban Transcendence, I'm your host today. I'm Martin Despang. From now on, I will co-host it together with Ali Yamashita. So the best on the moderator side is yet to come. And just very briefly, how we came up with the topic of urban transcendence. Ali grew up in Hawaii, and I've been here 2 years. And many consider Hawaii to be the paradise, the natural paradise, the paradise of nature. We, however, have the phenomenon that on one of the islands, Oahu, we have a city. It's called Honolulu, and Honolulu is a city. And so we're thinking a lot about the future of Honolulu as an urban fabric. And so we thought we make this a topic and bring in very, very exciting and enthused guests about that topic. So starting a show, with whom do you start, where do you start? Me being a professor of architecture at UH and a practicing architect, we both agreed to start where it's most obvious, sort of within our front yard. And so today's guest is Doctor of Architecture, Joon Yang. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us. And please tell us a little bit about yourself first, about your personal background, before we come to why you're here and why you're with us at UH.
Yes, I born and raised in Seoul, Korea, and studied at the Gyeonggi University about School of Architecture 4 years, and practiced with Byung-Soo Jo about 5 years as a project designer. Then he recommended me to start the ARC program at the University of Hawaii, so I came here and meet nice professor Despang and good professor Clark Llewellyn and Mary Kim Johnson, and I just graduated 2013 December.
Yeah, and I can say from my subjective point of view, Joon is our most extraordinary graduate who makes our program proud. And our program, I want to talk about a little bit. The Doctor of Architecture is something very unique because no other school in the United States of America has that degree. It's an accredited degree. Accredited means that you are, based upon, you're able to practice as an architect. Most other schools in the U.S. have the Master of Architecture, and we're in the process of constantly in the process of kind of redefining, rebranding is necessary these days because we're competing for students. So I share my very own personal definition to just communicate it to the normal people. I compare the Master of Architecture to being a nurse. Whereas, a nurse can do the basic things, take your pulse, take your blood pressure and certain things, test your temperature. So they're dealing with health, in a decent way. But the doctor, as the name implies, gives you a special education that allows you to do the equivalents to open heart surgery. So that's kind of my very populistic, hopefully popular definition of what got you attracted to end your education with that degree, Joon?
I believe the most strongest point in the ARC program is practicum. And University of Hawaii School of Architecture has a very strong global connection to award-winning architectural firm locally and globally. And every student have opportunity to participate as an intern in the middle of these firms, and also they get paid, and they also can get advice from the mentor at the internship firm. And they really get advantage in their doctoral thesis process because after taking TARC thesis 1, and then they move to practicum, and then they coordinate and then develop their doctoral thesis more professional way, then come back to Hawaii and finalize it. So I think it is very unique and very helpful process. And the other advantage is like system course in Hawaii, you teaching the wooden, some system course in graduate level, that's very strong and really makes balance with the design studio.
So how do you think you, with this degree, can basically innovate the profession of architecture, what we do as a doctor of architecture?
Yeah, I think the most easy way to explain is to explain my doctoral project. My doctoral project topic was embodying cultural identity through emerging digital tectonics, which means apply the idea of emerging digital fabrication technology to enrich local identity. These days is digital design day, so today there are a lot of digital fabrication projects in the world, but unfortunately most of them can be installed anywhere in the world, which means they really don't care about the local identity. For example, in 2008 there was a Beijing Olympic, and China government invited many international architects to design high quality Olympic stadium and facilities. For example, the water cube designed by PTW architects and other partners in Australia shows amazing digital fabrication technology with interesting concept of the water molecule structure, steel structure surrounded by transparent glass box. That is what I like, but it does not reflect any Chinese tradition or lifestyle in Beijing, so it can be installed in Waikiki and New York. But let's say the other example, the bird's nest designed by Herzog Müller in Switzerland. When they designed the project in the concept stage, they very seriously research about Chinese tradition and what is the identity in Beijing historically and their lifestyle and behavior. And after the research, they find a very critical icon that is bird's nest. And then they could fabricate it as an iconic image of bird's nest using high technology digital fabrication. So that is very good example for students who using, not only students but also professionals who using digital fabrication, and that is my point in my doctoral project.
Establishing a culture of agreeing to disagree here. I heard a German colleague, a structural engineer, actually the son of the legendary structural engineer Mike Schleich, who designed with Frei Otto the Olympic Center in Munich in the 1970s. Everything that you said been respected. He said from a tectonical point of view, he said the bird's nest is an offense to the bird. Because the bird does never take more material than it needs. It just takes the necessary. And the amount of steel that has been used in the Chinese Olympics bird's nets is 8 times as much of the steel a conventional stadium needs. So that's the criticism of sort of mimicking nature instead of interpreting nature. But again, in agreement, I'm always torn with the students because we want to support innovation as ideas. But we also then want to caution them about the appropriateness and the economies of means. And so you coming from an Asian culture and having been in Hawaii for several years, from my point of view, I found it interesting that any culture, but these in particular, have a tradition of being innovative, right? When they start from scratch, literally and figuratively speaking. So all they have is sticks, and they make, pretty efficient and effective structures out of it. However, when they develop, it's not always for their betterment. So I think this is what got us all excited about your work, that you're trying to make this connection between culture and technology.
Yeah.
Whereas usually they're sort of schizophrenic, or they defeat each other, right? The technology seems to increasingly take us away from nature and from culture. In best case, them as synergy. So maybe you explain a little bit more how your project is trying to find a remarriage of the two. And you can also show, obviously, the audience a little bit.
Just really quickly, let me show my doctoral project. I made a new version of Hawaiian ukulele using digital fabrication technology and Hawaiian local wood. This one, and the other example is I made a 5 feet long guitar. It's Korean traditional string instrument, and only using paper. This is by folding each small piece of paper using the voronoi, and the concept is embodying my experience in the traditional house in Korea. If I sit down in the bedroom in Korea house, I have to listen every sound, even the family discussion sound next room, and then sound of rain at the courtyard, and sound of wind, and sound of a singing bird.
And these are positive memories, right?
Oh yeah, very positive memories. So I feel the warmth from the sunlight. So this is the concept, and I really like to materialize my sense of experience to this materiality. So, and some people ask me, you are architectural student, but why are you making instrument? The reason I make string instrument is its structural system is very similar to architecture. To make a good sound quality string instrument, it really requires sophisticated level of understanding compressional stress, tensional stress, and property of materials. So I thought my hypothesis is if I can make good quality sound string instrument using digital fabrication, it can be applied to not only small scale installation interior, but also architecture. So I think it's very successful project, and also proud I made the first paper structured string instrument in the world.
Yeah, we were very impressed.
And if I more describe about my experience in East Asia, I was born and raised in Korea. I wanna say I have experienced Korea, China, Japan, and 5 years about Hawaii. And in short time, to summarize their lifestyle, I think it will be good to show the garden. If we see this China garden in Shanghai, you see how the garden is designed monumentally, big scale. The sense of scale is so big in China. This is all my personal view. This is the Japanese garden. It's like very geometric and like very like mathematical and symbolic and human-made, not natural. That's the character of Japanese garden. And then this is Korea garden, and there is a mountain and nature, and people does not touch the nature, just to put the building on the nature. So that's the Korean architecture style. And this is the Hawaiian garden, just nature. This is the Hawaii. So when I see the Hawaii residential building and then public building, there is no high concrete wall in Hawaii. And instead there is just opening or green and plants. And which means they like people each other and they trust each other. So I think that's the lifestyle in Hawaii.
You mentioned your apprentice years, which were sort of going parallel to your education and prior to your education. So maybe you share a little bit your work together with Byung-Sung Cho, and a term maybe helping us to explain the work that we have established amongst each other when we were working is the one of complex simplicity.
Right.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, when I take your class at the school, it was the H-Home project and I was teaching assistant, and you said to me complex simplicity. Oh my God, I'm very familiar because my design methodology was very similar like that, and I could feel what it means. It can be described like minimum gesture, maximum experience. It is phenomenology because people cannot perceive everything at the same time. So it means when architect design complex form, the material should be very simple, one or two material. For example, Zaha Hadid, she designed very complicated form, but the reason many people like her work is she very minimized the form with innovative, very clean detail. So her project looks like very sculpture. But and if we wanna use complex materiality, it is always good use simple geometry. Martin and Byung-Soo are architects who design building using simple geometry and by increasing the complex materiality to really enrich the experience of inside of space and can experience the tradition and communication. And I think this is the definition of complex simplicity, which is what I inspired from you and Byung.
I think you got a sample of the house
yeah.
you worked with Boyoung Sung Chu, which I always call the Earth House, but I think the official name is different, right?
Yeah, before I explain Byung-Soo project, I think I have to show some important research that I did in East Asia and Hawaii. I thought I researched the representative architects, East Asia and Hawaii, and I find one very interesting common factor. All of them reinterpret tradition using the methodology of complex simplicity. So in Japan is the pioneer in the complex simplicity, interpreting the tradition. Long time ago, the Tange Genjo, he designed the Tokyo Olympic Stadium, but at that time the concept was the mimic of traditional Japanese house, something mimic. This is about the form, but Ando Tadao totally changed the perception of design methodology. He does not design the form. He just made the materiality and simple geometry that defines the space. And if we walk around the space, we experience the Japanese traditional space. So this is the Japanese, the Tadao Ando. And I don't have images, but Kengo Kuma, he really seriously research about local materials of the site and invent it and apply to the facade system and flooring system, which is good. And Shigeru Ban, he really research about paper these days, and that because of Japan has a lot of natural disaster, earthquake and tsunami, that is kind of tradition. So the temporary shelter is very required. So he invented paper and fireproofing something and very quickly. So that's good. And Toyo, he really utilizing the digital fabrication and make a very simple and strong geometry that is related to site geometry, climate, and tradition, of course. And Wang Shu in China, he also very respect tradition with complex simplicity logic. And Byung, he mostly really like concrete, using the exposed concrete, which looks like similar Ando Tadao. But I think it is totally different. This is the concrete texture of Ando Tadao, which is very clean and refined. 3 feet by 6 feet. He invented as a Japanese scale. And if you see it, this is black, but Japanese house, traditional house, that is very refined and very clean. But if you see concrete of Byung, that is very rough. He used the board form concrete of pine wood. That is very rough, and I believe this is from the traditional identity of Korean traditional house gate. If you see the gate and small and large, it does not match each other very well because they used the local material itself instead of processing. So this is Byung's concrete. When he sliced out the pine wood on the side and then cast it on the concrete. This is the Oyster House project. And then by decaying the house, there's a new life appear here. So this is very similar like Korean Garden. So utilizing. And this is the concrete box house, his project. This is his summer house. And it looks like just garage, very rough garage, and then metal. And this concrete box house has very simple geometry and the space of the traditional house, the experience of the inside. And it is very honest. The concrete and metal directly meet, and the the laminate glazing and concrete directly meet. The reason of this detailing is he wanna make a form, not just simple, extremely pure. He just wanna make pure and pure just a thing, and then so that people can just perceive space. That was his concept. So, and then for that is very difficult to me because to make a pure form, we need to invent. He really spent a lot of time and money to invent the detail and something. This is the new tectonic. This is about 1 foot thickness flat concrete slab, and he, instead of using the chemical waterproofing membrane, he used the steel trowel 4 times every 4 hours. So no chemical membrane. It looks like very natural and no water leaking. So that kind of invention was his design. This is Earth House. It looks like only space, something, Earth House. And then if you see all this detail, the wood canopy is recycled from Korean traditional wood door, and then connected to wire, look like very minimalized, the perception. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
And then we're going to be back for this very exciting topic of emerging Asian Pacific architecture with Doctor of Architecture Hong-Joon Yang.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rafi. Every week, I'm right here at Think Tank Hawaii, 3 p.m. on Mondays. My show is Boards' Bio Briefings. What do we do here? Well, we watch sperm swim. We see if they catch anybody. We check out the latest biosimilars. You know, the kind that, what was his name, the guy with the bicycle? I guess we forgot his name, but he was taking EPO and other human growth factors. We'll be talking about human growth factors. You want to know where to get some? Maybe I'll tell. Anyway, you can catch me, as I said, every week right here, Monday, 3 p.m., Think Tank Hawaii, Dr. Rafi. You can also find me on Twitter, Bioinfo Medical. Or you can catch me on Facebook, Dr. Rafael Boritzer. I'll be happy to converse with you. Aloha.
So we're back with our show Urban Transcendence. Today's topic is emerging Asian Pacific architecture, and our special guest is the Doctor of Architecture Hong-Joon Yang. You shared us your wide knowledge of architects that you admire, who basically come from your cultural region of Asia. You mentioned Kengo Kuma, who I share the appreciation for, especially his 2 theories that he sort of developed to express his methodology of working, and one is basically anti-object. He
Right.
already explained that. He doesn't want to design which, continue the tradition of Kenso Tangi, which was object-based.
Right.
He wanted to go space-based. And the other one, which I like even more, is erasing architecture. That
That's
he says,
interesting,
there's a connection between nature, and we have also created a terminology when we work, which we called architecture. So it's hard to say, but we
Right.
can all practice. So it's not a C for, which comes from tectonics, architecture, but it comes from architecture. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your understanding of architecture. Why is texture important in all these architects' work and in your work more than big spectacular form?
As I explained, the concrete texture of Byung and Ando's concrete, two different concrete, the texture is very connected to our lifestyle. So that's the reason important, and it also reflects the social and history. And as you see, the Ando's concrete, it really reflects the Japanese 3-piece by 6-piece scale and very fine finish. And it is related to Japanese, the traditional gate, very clean detail. As you see Byung's concrete, it really describes about the Korean sensitivity. Like the Korean Hawaiian Garden, we just don't change the site. We just put minimum gesture and then make a win-win with nature. So and then even the door gate in traditional house, we just put the wood and then fix it and make it functional. We minimize the processing, and then so Byung's concrete really explain about the tradition. So that's the meaningful of the texture.
When you talk about gesture, which you just did, it seems to me that rather than sort of an imperial gesture that wants to show power, I think the work of the architects you desire and admire and desire for that reason, and that you work with, are sort of think of gesture in a different way. And I know of a project that you very recently did, which is about cultural representation, which is extremely exciting because you worked on the proposal for the Milan Biennale Pavilion together with Byung-Sung Chu for the pavilion. So maybe you can share a little bit of that project with us.
Okay, yeah. After graduate, I participate the Byung-Soo Architecture again and did the Milan Expo 2015 Korean Pavilion project. And this is the proposed image. This is the rectangular simple form, and all of the structure is composed of locally generated in Milan, produced in scaffolding. It is totally recyclable material. So it is in the exhibition. It is very functional urban farming, self-sustaining farming. And then after the expo, it can be dismantling and will be shipped to developing country and then rebuild to greenhouse to support food for the people in the developing country. Yeah, that was the main concept.
It's very much in the tradition of, which reminds me of when we in Hanover, my hometown in Germany, had the expo in 2000. As we know, Peter Zumthor had a similar kind of strategy where he made it out of log timbers.
Right.
And basically the timbers dried over the time of the expo. And it became a nice, very transcending atmosphere.
Right.
And it just got dismantled and been, basically used as building material.
Right.
When you talk about sort of integrating nature into architecture, and I think this is one of the bigger topics of this show here, that for the longest time, the
Right.
city and the countryside, so nature, natural nature and man-made nature have sort of coexisted in sort of not necessarily a harmony. It seems the time that now the newest generation is sort of increasingly rethinking the way we live and how the city will transcend beyond its mere physical existing, which is basically pretty much consumerism and capitalized as the driving force. So that gets us maybe a little bit into the H-Home project that we worked together. So you got the floor plan up here, so maybe you want to explain a little bit also the context and the ideas of complex simplicity as far as the integration of nature and architecture here in Hawaii.
Yes, if I describe more about the H-Home, this is the side boundary was rectangle geometry, and we divided it by 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 grid, and we reflected Hawaiian tradition in this geometry. That is the local family really like in the center, and they really like to discuss and chat each other, and then after that they dispersed to their room. So there are 1, 2 bedroom and kitchen and the parking space, and this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms produce the 4 different in-between space, and which increases the in-between the interconnection. That was the main concept in this H-Home. And to maximize the spatial experience, we minimize the surface geometry. For example, we used the green flat roof, and then iconic the simplified Hawaiian roof in the center. That is the top of the living room. I think this is really meaningful approach after OSHPAP in Hawaii. After OSHPAP, seriously, I did not see good emerging modern architecture in Hawaii that seriously consider the local tradition with complex simplicity. But this is good starting point, I think, in my opinion. So I think Martin and your students can be a pioneer in the next generation in Hawaii to start the emerging modern architecture in Hawaii, like Kengokuma, Ando Tadao, Byung-Soo-jo, Wangshu, they did in East Asia. So.
Well, thank you. I think it needs you guys, the youngest generation, and we're very happy to help with whatever we can. We just attended a Talking Hawaiian Architecture, and maybe where the point was where innovation stopped and waits to be picked up again. We attended a presentation about the work of Pete Wimberly, who was an architect who came in the 1930s, I guess, if I remember correctly, and has significantly kind of impacted the architecture on the island of Hawaii. And so what's your thought about why was there innovation and experimentation, pretty much in the way you describe it, that you want to do it now, and why was there this long period of the absence of that? What could be a reason for that? Or do you feel that at all, that there was? I mean, you already said Ossipov was probably the last one, and then Wimberly was another one. What could be the reason? Why did architecture, in the sense you think of architecture, basically go away or go to sleep and needs to be waked up again?
As I mentioned, the OSHPAP and they design architecture and seriously, very gently, seriously respect the site and utilize the site energy, climate, and make a detail that is very appropriate in Hawaiian nature and climate and behavior, of course, people's behavior. So yeah, that is the reason I was appreciate their work.
So you're saying, coming back to that, observation that every culture in its origin is innovative. So there's the tradition of innovation. So maybe there has to be this sort of innovating that tradition, right?
Right.
So when you think about the islands of Hawaii and appropriateness of means, and you are very conscious about materiality, what are your thoughts about the appropriateness of materiality? And also maybe you can share our thoughts and research into that direction, if you think about wood, if you think about concrete.
The question is about the materiality for the relationship.
Well, what do we build with? Because in the days we describe as the traditional days, right? Material was always local because there was no way to bring it in from somewhere. Only in modern times we allowed ourselves, for the high price of fossil fuel and everything going with that, to push a button on Amazon and say, I order this building material and it comes, and I, in worst case, don't care what, why and how and what it means. So what's your opinion about that you have lived on the islands of
Hawaii? Yes. In Hawaii, it is very difficult to get materials because Hawaii is isolated and naturally very preserved. So in the future, I really propose to design, when we design in Hawaii, it will be very good if we use recyclable material. Although we use concrete, let's say we used concrete, and more important one is when we dismantling the concrete, how the concrete structure that can be recycled again. And if we can propose and we can solve the problem, it can be self-sustaining architectural system. Scrub architecture can lead that kind of system. So study about the material and its potential and its recyclability. So that is very important issue in Hawaii. So your system class in University of Hawaii is very important. I think, yeah.
Thank you, very encouraging. We take another short break, and then we're going to be back with our guest, Doctor of Architecture, Joon Yang.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, here on Think Tech Hawaii. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to this probe of our new show, Urban Transcendence. The topic today is emerging Pacific Asian architecture, and our guest is Doctor of Architecture, Joon Yang. Joon, we very passionately talked and very critically reflective talked about the economy of means and how do we build on our islands where resources are scarce and we create an increasing demand. So one of my big learning curves, as you know, I'm a big fan of wood and have done a lot of work in wood and considered wood one of the most appropriate materials until I found out that here the sandalwood has been shipped out a long time ago to Asia, but at least they made beautiful shrines out of it. The koa wood the same, so we ended up with having no wood, but we create a huge housing demand, and we basically ship it in from the Pacific Northwest on the mainland where it gets termite treated, so by the time it's shipped here, it doesn't have any of the advantages anymore of ecological reasons that we initially assume it has.
Yeah.
So very exciting to hear about your projections about concrete. And concrete is a material that we're working with and suggesting for the H home, and also for another project that maybe you want to talk a little bit about.
Yes, this project is a Hawaiian Manoa Learning Center exchange headquarter project, and the Martin's idea is making simple geometry of the surface by stacking 3 feet cube concrete. Each module is 3 feet concrete, and then we can put LED for student learning and or the plants, local plants on the tray that can be come out and come in. And then this is the skin of the building and structure at the same time. And if people go in, there is a foyer between the office and lecture room, and then this is the skin, and then the daylight come in. So interesting one is there is in between space, that corridor, students can walk around and experience the nature of Hawaii that composed of building skin. So I really appreciate this idea of stacking, because after dismantling, each piece can be recycled, I think, recycled to another structure, or can be chair, interior, anything, something. So it is meaningful because it shows the possibility of a new design in Hawaii, and using just common material, not new expensive chemical material. So, and by stacking, we can make not only two-story building, it can be applied to high-rise building, residential. So, yeah.
So almost coming closer to the end of this really exciting talk, we both agreed that we wanted to conclude with something that's really important for us, and you told me about that. That is, whenever we talk about architecture and whatever architecture serves and what its purpose is, and it's manifold. Architecture has to deal with economy, it has to deal with ecology increasingly, it has to deal with social impacts, it has to deal with health, it deals with a variety of things. But what's at the very end, what's the one thing that architecture should not lack or should foremost have?
The final goal of architecture. That the final goal architecture, what I am thinking is poetry. I believe poetry is the communication between human being and nature. In this relationship, if we input one more layer, kind of tradition and local people's lifestyle and behavior, it really enhances the quality of the poetic. So I think it is the architect's role to make a bridge between human being and nature, and exploring the tradition and digital technology together and make a good mixture as a poetry.
And that seems an ongoing challenge that I'm really happy that you're willing to take on as the emerging generation of young architects, because obviously the poetic is a non-quantitative measurement, right? Everything else we can measure with technology as an assessment tools, as we like to do in a technocratic society. But the poetic is sort of a soft factor, right? It's a human factor. It's a qualitative aspect, as you correctly said. That's non-measurable. So it takes a lot more effort to bring this basically back to society?
Right, so yeah, as I said, in the aspect of phenomenology, the design methodology of complex simplicity is very useful tool to maximize the poetry experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thank you very much. We also are very happy to have you here because you will leave us soon. You want to
Yes.
tell us very briefly where you go? And I personally hope and I believe you're coming back because you're just gaining more experience and knowledge to
Okay, yeah.
give back to the islands of Hawaii. So where will you be in between?
Yes, I hope so.
Where will you be in between? Where will you go?
Yeah, I go to Seattle, Gensler, to explore, to continue my doctoral study, the digital fabrication, and Gensler is global firm, and I wanna apply it into BIM.
Mm-hmm.
So with the Rabbit, and so yeah, that's my next goal.
Okay. That kind of makes us come full circle because we started with how do you think your degree, which I think if we explain it further is sort of research based, right? Whereas in the MArch it's more sort of a training to be
Yes.
an architect, so you know how the tools to use
Right.
and the representations. Whereas the arc, as you I think very innovatively demonstrate, is research based. And research sounds very abstract as well, but it really is architectural research. So it's identifying something that is innovative and could change the profession of architecture for the better. And you bring that into the profession. So you will improve the profession through bringing that interest and expertise into the profession. And actually, historically, it gets us back to what we call the good old days, and always have to watch out that we don't get sentimental about it.
Right.
Although I really liked the lecture we attended about Pete Wimberly. He was always wearing shorts and sandals, we heard, and he was driving race cars. And it's not trying to reactivate the kind of false perception of an architect who's just having too much fun. He was hardworking, and there's a lot of buildings that are a lot of fun to still look at from his era. But there was this kind of passion. It wasn't just a business, right? They came from I think a lot of the values you believe in, that especially coming as a foreigner, which we both are, we probably sometimes have the ability and the privilege to see certain things clearer as if you're in the culture. I experienced that myself when I go back to Germany, which I'm doing as well soon over the summer. I'm just seeing things that I took for granted. Like we have an urban forest in the middle of Hanover that as a kid it rains a lot and it's cold rain. So on my bike I didn't really appreciate it. It was more a burden to go through the forest. And now when I'm back I'm thinking what a treasure to have an urban forest in the city. So you basically see things clearer. So if you would come back to Hawaii, which we hope, what would you try to what would be your dream project to work on if you could choose? What would be your dream?
Yeah, of course, I will continue the realization of my doctoral project. It is the digital fabrication, and of course, I will find the Hawaiian tradition in the new way, because I'm outside of the Hawaii, and if I back to Hawaii, I can see the new one that I did not see it before. So that is the target, and then wanna represent it, the target as a space, and then the space is composed of digital fabrication, of course using local material or recyclable material. Yeah, that is my goal, and I wanna, when I work in Seattle, Gensler, I really wanna learn the BIM and management, that global connection in the world. So even though I back to Hawaii, the project will be done globally. Hopefully, yeah.
Well, we talked about architecture. Texture in nature is always performative. So it's not just about form, it's about form that performs, and mostly the form comes as a result of the performance. I think this has a lot to do with digital fabrication, and the lecture we attended about Pete Wimberly is that Don Gu, who was a partner in his firm, was basically the one informing us about Pete's phases he talked about. And one of the phases of his work he called grill architecture. And King Street, by the way, here in Honolulu, is a very good example of that era where that was mostly in the 1950s, where air conditioning hasn't become that invasive way out yet, and they were making modern buildings that used a lot of glass, which was the way to do it in these times. But then they had this awareness that it would grill you if you don't use a grill. So the grill is that bioclimatic device, overheating protection, that they put this perforated metal screen over the glass box. And here in the tropics, where the sun is always the thing to keep out, different than in other climates, which we both come from, where it gets cold, and we saw quite a bit of snow.
Yeah.
Actually, this picture here shows the earth house in the snow.
In the winter, yes.
We don't have this here, so we can actually, that grill can kind of serve us permanently and help us basically to be shaded. It's pretty much the architectural interpretation of what a tree does as from a performative point of view. So I think, digital fabrication, I think is about the economy of means. You could be very precise, right? You could be very efficient and effective. You use the least amount of material, you have the least amount of waste. You can be very strategic. So maybe one of your research fields could be sort of this reactivation, innovation of this kind of grill architecture that you create, invent, design these new shading enclosures for buildings. That again is sort of a mankind interpretation of nature, because we know the most pleasant spaces to be is under the beautiful big trees we have here. That's what we seek, where we seek the shade. So do you see a potential in that direction, maybe?
Yeah, these days a lot of University of Hawaii students, they using digital technology, and the one thing that they should know is that digital fabrication is just a tool. How to apply the digital fabrication to local site is very important issue. So in the case, the grid architecture and OSHPOP, the IBM building, that is really good direction that UH students have to look at, and then when they make something, think about why OSHPOP make the form like that, and so that is because of the not only iconic image but also climate, nature, tradition. So yeah, the conclusion is digital fabrication is tool, and apply the tool using the smartly by considering local site's character.
Well, we look very much forward to you further investigating and sort of sharpening your tools, and then hopefully, certainly from my point of view, coming back and you and your colleagues becoming the new Osipov generation. That is how you said, that is global is another term, that is totally rooted in the specificity of local culture. But at the same time, as the IBM building Osipov has been, it's sort of the key feature in the Honolulu Fade and Wallpaper City Guide. So it's a flagship for innovative modernism.
Right.
And so what I understand is that you say we need sort of more of these icons these days that are not invasive species, but they're an interpretation or an evolution is the better word of these kind of local traditions.
Yeah.
And pushes them into the next era, which we use technology, we have technology, so we should not ignore technology. We shouldn't go back and make things with sticks and hands only. we should use the technology that we have in a very, very smart way. And I believe that's a very
Yeah,
innovative way to
so-
look at it.
We have to use technology because it's very efficient and reduce a lot of cost. If we do it smartly, we can minimize the materials and reducing cost and increase the potential of material. So we have to, the conclusion is we have to think globally and act very locally.
All right.
Yes, and then the complex simplicity is in the middle of that
All
to
right.
maximize the experience of poetry.
I think that was a great conclusion.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joon.
Thank
Much
you for having me.
appreciated. Thank you guys for joining us, and hope to see you again in our show of Urban Transcendence.